So today we're digging into the fallout from round one, group 202. And our mission for you listening is to decode the critics' reasoning that really personalized critical calculus behind how these four wildly different randomly paired albums got ranked.
Precisely. And the method Greensterox uses is, well, it's straightforward, but it's also pretty ruthless. It reflects that tournament brutality, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Albums get grouped randomly, then they're ranked, strictly best to worst, based purely on his deep critical listening. Only the top two move on to round two.
And the bottom two.
Instant elimination. Permanent. Gone. And this specific group, Group 202, it's summarized by this slightly odd algebraic title, SUM Nashville x Tom Odell 41.
What a name. It's fantastic, but also just completely chaotic, right? It gives you an immediate feel for the critic's personality. You've got high art potential mixed with maybe some commercial stuff and just the sheer randomness of trying to quantify the best album.
Yeah.
So what does that formula even mean? Maybe the score needed for those two to beat Sum 41, the obvious dud.
Could be. It definitely highlights the hyperbole that kind of defines this whole quest. The formula is there to summarize the fight, but the tension underneath is real. We need to figure out why the numbers crunched the way they did.
Right. Why did two make it, and why were the other two just dismissed so finally?
Exactly. It's an exercise in looking at taste versus maybe critical consistency. Does his internal logic actually hold up across four really different genres? Let's unpack that first big conclusion he reached.
Okay, let's do it. Starting at the top. The undisputed, clear winner of Group 202, Ed Sheeran's X. Or, Multiply, as most people call it.
Yeah.
It just sailed through, apparently. Secured its spot in round two, no contest. It kind of sets the quality ceiling for this whole group.
That's the benchmark, absolutely.
Right.
The highest point we measure the others against. But, before we even get into the music itself, the source material kind of forces us to acknowledge the running commentary on Sheeran's branding. Or maybe his anti-marketing strategy with the album titles.
Oh, yeah, the symbols. Greensterox had some fun with this, didn't he? It shows his wit. He frames Sheeran as being on this one-man crusade to muck up web search engines everywhere with these symbol names.
It's true.
We went from plus to X, multiply. And the critique is basically that the naming is just designed to be frustrating.
It's such an irreverent take, but it's also kind of spot on for modern branding, isn't it? Especially now with digital music. It makes you wonder, okay, what's next?
Right.
The source loved speculating, suggesting things like equals or maybe infinity or just a tilde, like he said,
Right.
or even asterisk.
I loved the idea of him just going for a couple of wavy lines or like an emoji nobody can actually find on their keyboard.
Yeah.
It immediately makes you think of Prince, doesn't it? The whole unpronounceable symbol era, the artist formerly known as Ed Sheeran.
Definitely.
The source is clearly enjoying the joke, the story behind the annoyance. It's like a meta commentary on fame and branding today.
But what's really interesting is, despite that playful jab at the marketing, the critic immediately pivots, sets aside the whole aesthetic thing to confirm, look, musically X is just superior.
Yeah, he does.
It's seen as a really distinct, significant step up from the previous album. Plus, the critique shifts completely from the trivial naming to the actual substance, describing the songs as stronger, better, more dynamic, and memorable.
That word dynamic, that feels really important for an artist like Sheeran, right? The album's framed as this great showcase of his breathtaking musical ability, which is, that's high praise for someone mostly in that acoustic singer-songwriter space.
It is.
That dynamic range suggests he's really stretching himself, bringing in new sounds, new textures, but still keeping that core talent. It's not just acoustic ballads, it feels like an ambitious pop record.
And that ambition, it's really underlined by the specific tracks the source points out. You've got Sing.
Yes, Sing.
Which is noted specifically for that critical injection of funk from Pharrell Williams. That collaboration, it clearly lifted the track way beyond typical Sheeran, didn't it?
Yeah.
Gave it a rhythm, a groove that just demanded attention, and got it commercially.
Definitely. But then you need the contrast, right? The other side of the coin, proving his range. Bloodstream is called out as a brilliant ballad. It shows he can absolutely nail those intimate, acoustic, really emotionally resonant moments, just as well as the big production of funky tracks. That duality is probably why the album felt so strong overall.
And the consistency across the board is highly praised. That's why it dominated Group 202. The source mentions other quality songs too, like The Man, Nina, I See Fire.
I See Fire, yeah.
And, of course, the massive hit, Thinking Out Loud. These tracks form this really solid core that just makes the album impossible to ignore in this kind of quest. It's undeniably packed with hits and quality deeper cuts.
And there's always a but with this critic, isn't there? Even with all that praise, Greenstocks found what he saw as a major flaw, almost disqualifying, it sounds like. The album still feels a little too slow. There's this explicit craving for more up-tempo stuff, more moments like Sing, to balance out all the deep ballads and the acoustic feel. It seems like the critic thinks Sheeran holds back right when he should floor it.
And, okay, this is maybe where we need to push back a bit on the source's logic, right? He acknowledges the album's strength, its core identity, but then penalizes it for not being something else.
Exactly.
Is that a fair standard? If an album is nearly perfect, doing its acoustic-heavy thing, is demanding more Sing-like tracks, basically asking it to be a different genre. It almost sounds like he's docking points from X because it wasn't, I don't know, Divide yet.
That's a really sharp point. He criticizes the lack of tempo, yet the very things he praises, that breathtaking musical ability, the strength of the ballad, they kind of depend on that slower pace sometimes. It's a paradox of taste, maybe?
It seems like it.
He wants the artist's full range, but maybe the artist chose to focus on texture and emotion over just pure energy here.
Still, despite that reservation, the critic wraps up the Sheeran section by saying he still has unbelievable potential to go on and create a bona fide classic album.
Right.
So X isn't crowned flawless, not quite the classic yet, but it's a powerful sign of potential. And definitely good enough to dominate this group. It set the standard they needed to beat.
And that standard is exactly what Tom Odell's Wrong Crowd just scraped past, apparently. Sneaking into that second qualifying spot sounds like a real nail-biter.
Transitioning now, to our second qualifier, Tom Odell's Wrong Crowd. It got that #2 spot by, as you said, narrowly beating the Nashville soundtrack. So that was the real fight for survival in Group 202.
Okay, so this one sounds like a totally different beast critically compared to Sheeran's big pop dominance. The first thing Greenstocks flags is this major stylistic influence. The source says straight up, the album carries more than a whiff of Jeff Buckley about it.
Ooh, okay.
That's a heavy comparison, isn't it? It immediately sets expectations. We're dealing with something potentially artsy, profound, maybe a bit melancholic.
Definitely sets a high bar. And the description of the sound confirms that high art angle. It's called piano-led dark gospel top, but sitting on top of the jazz pop beat.
Interesting combo.
Yeah, it's definitely not straight pop or rock. It's tagged as an artsy sort of album full of poetic philosophical meanderings. This is the kind of record that, asks for patience from the listener, but demands a bit more depth, which makes sense for this kind of quest.
But artists walk a really fine line with that stuff, don't they? The album apparently successfully conveys an awful lot of heartfelt emotion, especially when the songs get stripped down.
Right.
The track Jealousy is pulled out as a key example of that raw, powerful emotional range. So Odell's artistry, it seems, isn't really in doubt.
And here's that critical tightrope walk that defined this whole review, apparently almost cost the album its spot. The source says the album delicately borders the dreaded land of dirge.
The dreaded land of dirge.
Fortunately, it usually falls on the right side of that divide.
Yeah.
But we probably need to unpack what the critic actually means by dirge here.
Yeah, what is the land of dirge exactly? Is it just boring?
It's where artistic ambition tips over into just sheer unbearable misery for the listener. When something's so slow, so heavy, so contemplative that it just loses its pulse and becomes an emotional slog.
Okay, got it.
The fact that Odell apparently manages to inject just enough compositional flair, just enough hooks or dynamics to pull it back most of the time, that's what saved him the spot. He keeps the drama and the emotion without collapsing into, self-pitying boredom or musical monotony.
Okay, so how does that play out track by track, this struggle for listenability?
Well, the opener, Wrong Crowd, is called A Weird Song. Starts apparently quite somber, reflective vocal before building into this clappy, catchy, circular chorus. That dynamic shift right in the first track kind of sets the tone for the whole album's mood swings. Provides those necessary moments of lift, I guess.
And then there's the single, right? The more commercial concession, Magnetize.
Yep. Described as a full-on production attack. Retro feel. And it's got that chart-friendly anthemic chant, You Keep Me Holding On.
Right.
It shows Odell can do commercial appeal, but maybe like Sheeran's Sing, it's an outlier that proves the rest of the album needed that contrast to even work.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. With the critic's own indecision being like a metaphor for the album itself, The track Sparrow.
Ah, yes, Sparrow.
The critic apparently admitted this song underscores the problem with this album because he genuinely couldn't decide if he actually liked it or not.
That kind of critical uncertainty is fascinating, isn't it? So the first half is, by his own account, very slow and miserable.
Right, dirge territory.
Exactly. But he's saved, or the song is saved, by this successful use of a wall of distortion at the climax. That apparently makes the track interesting and sort of necessary in the end.
So that sudden, dramatic shift, acoustic misery to sonic intensity, that's the album's trick. Pulling itself back from the brink just in time.
Seems to be the key maneuver, yeah. Pulling it back from that dirge threshold repeatedly. And of course, we can't skip the personality bit, the mention of the Game of Thrones reference.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently the song made the critic imagine the character High Sparrow, which just confirms how much Greenstorox's personal associations feed into his ratings. It highlights the subjective nature of this whole album quest.
Absolutely. Okay, so beyond the structure and the near misses with Misery, the production details get praised.
Highly praised, actually. The source notes splashes abound of 1930s style instrumentation throughout large parts of the album.
1930s style, like...
Yeah, this historical nod.
Yeah.
Using things like specific string arrangements, maybe some brass or piano voicings that recall that older jazz pop era, it adds this crucial layer of sophistication, apparently.
Okay, I could see that.
And the track Silhouette is the prime example of this versatility. It starts out like a delicate mini orchestral piece, but then quickly becomes a bouncy, Keane-like pop song. It shows Odell and his producers have range, a good ear for arrangement, and importantly, it actively stops the listener settling into that monotonous dirge groove.
So in the end, the album just had enough moments of clear quality. He specifically lists mystery, entertainment, Here I Am, and I thought I knew what love was to push it past the competition into second place.
Yep, those are the clinchers. But the final assessment really confirms that tension in the album quest method. The jury is still out.
So it qualified, but grudgingly.
Pretty much. Qualification achieved, but the verdict on its long-term greatness.
Right.
Still uncertain, it scraped by on the strength of its artistic ambition, even if that ambition occasionally led it, right to the edge of darkness.
Which is kind of the exact opposite experience of the number 3 album, isn't it? The Nashville soundtrack. Started with excitement, genuine quality, but ended with disappointment. Failing the longevity test, basically.
Yeah, this section gives us some great insight into the critic's own personality and methods. We get this fantastic personal anecdote right at the start.
Oh, yeah.
About how he got the album. He'd watched the first couple of seasons of Nashville, was genuinely impressed by the song's quality, and decided he needed the album.
Okay, makes sense.
But it wasn't just buying it. He specifically bought the Season 1 bonus tracks Disc 2 for his wife's birthday.
No, he didn't.
Oh, yes. That classic, buy the wife a CD that I want to listen to myself routine.
That is the oldest trick in the book. I think every single person listening has probably pulled the birthday soundtrack acquisition move at least once.
Probably.
It tells you how personally invested Greenstorox must have been in that show's music, though.
It sits the context perfectly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This wasn't bought because of hype. It was acquired out of genuine admiration for the show's musical credibility.
And
he was impressed by the quality, noting the actors actually sound pretty good too. All of them do.
And the genre is clearly that country pop blend, but he emphasizes the huge emphasis on pop sensibilities. It's designed to be catchy straight away, consumable, using the actor's star power and, attractiveness on screen. That's where the analysis comes in. It's produced for instant accessibility, which is why it grabbed him initially.
And those actors, they get some serious praise. It proves the music wasn't just, passable background stuff.
Yeah.
Special mentions for Hayden Panettiere, Chris Carmack, and especially Claire Bowen.
Claire Bowen, yeah.
The critic suggests they are practically good enough to stop acting and start singing for a living. That's incredibly high praise, right? Suggests real musical talent beyond just acting.
Definitely. Are there specific examples backing that up?
Oh, yeah. One Works Better, performed by Claire Bowen and Sam Palladio, is called a little cracker of a song. And the critic even remembers a specific lyric. Gonna make you see the difference between just winning and revival.
Wow, okay. That level of recall shows it must have stuck with him initially. Strong writing.
Then there's I'm a Girl, described as a girly anthem that the critic openly admits he risks his image singing along to with the windows down.
Huh. Love that.
It's pure enthusiasm, isn't it? Shows the songs could transcend genre and demographic. They just got under your skin, which is the mark of really successful pop writing, right?
Absolutely. And the album overall is technically polished.
Very much so. A major point of praise. Other tracks like Casino, The Morning of the Rain, the roadie version, they all contribute to what he calls a very polished little album. Everything suggests this should have qualified easily.
So what's the production secret then?
Well, the production strategy is highlighted as really effective. The team uses duets a lot and very well. Apparently helps enrich in the harmonies. But here's the interesting technical bit. The actionable knowledge, maybe? The critic speculates the duets might also make up for lack of vocal power in places.
Ah, that's fascinating, like studio magic. If an actor sounds great but maybe doesn't have the sheer lung power of a pro singer,
Exactly.
pairing them up covers any weakness. The harmonies fill it out, make it sound fuller than a solo track night.
That seems to be the theory. It's smart production, ensures the music keeps its quality, its credibility for the show.
And the critic applauded that effort, right?
Yeah.
The network trying to give the show real musical credibility. It wasn't just background noise.
Absolutely. It was seen as a core creative element, which he genuinely respected.
Okay, so if the music's good, the actors are good singers, the production is polished, why did it only get third? Why did it fail to progress in the album quest? Why did Tom Odell's difficult album beat this shiny product?
The key flaw, according to Greenstocks, is longevity. And this is the really deep insight here. He states that repeated listens become less and less bearable.
Less bearable. Ouch.
Yeah. The music, while perfect for that pseudo-music video TV world, it just loses its illusion when you judge it only by ear.
Ah. So the visual element carries it at first. When you watch the show, you've got the attractive people, the fast editing, the drama, the nice locations, all framing the song.
Right.
But once you strip all that away, the emotional and visual context, and you're just left with the audio, the depth, or maybe the lack of depth, gets exposed.
That's exactly it. The songs are great in context, but maybe not strong enough in isolation for this kind of deep dive.
Okay, that makes sense.
The initial shine of that perfect pop crafting wears off because, unlike the challenging, maybe deeper artistry of Tom Odell, the Nashville songs were fundamentally designed for short-term impact and supporting the narrative.
Right.
They maybe lacked the structural complexity or that raw emotional grit needed to sustain repeated, really critical listening over time. The kind you need for a multi-round album quest. It's a key lesson, isn't it? Great production doesn't automatically mean critical longevity.
Which brings us neatly, I suppose, to the final album. The one clearly eliminated from Group 202, Sum 41's All Killer, No Filler. And this part of the critique sounds like pure demolition derby.
It really is. Absolute bottom of the barrel for this group. Sum 41's All Killer, No Filler takes fourth place, eliminated with extreme prejudice, you might say. Greenstocks doesn't waste any time, immediately coins that dismissive nickname, Bum 41.
Oof, that's harsh right out of the gate. But it tells you the kind of emotional reaction it provoked. The first criticism is basically categorizing them as just a Blink-182 clone without the hit singles.
Yeah, that stings. Puts them firmly in the derivative and didn't quite make it through you. The box of pop punk.
And then the focus turns, like immediately and mercilessly, onto the album title itself.
Oh, irony, yeah.
All Killer, No Filler. Yet the source describes it as so depressingly full of filler. That contradiction becomes the main weapon, doesn't it? Suggests they were either arrogant or just didn't understand their own material.
And it's not just a little filler. The critic insists there is more filler here than a polyfill factory.
Wow.
That level of hyperbole, it suggests genuine frustration, like the content just completely failed to live up to the promise of the title. Ultimate disappointment when expectation meets mediocrity.
So given how weak he found it overall, were there any bright spots?
He had to search pretty hard, apparently.
Yeah.
Found only 2 tracks he deemed mildly interesting, just 2.
Mm-hmm.
The first is Pain for Pleasure, which, kind of humorously, the critic thought sounded like early Def Leppard, even though he speculated the band was actually going for Maiden.
Wait, hang on. They were trying for Iron Maiden complex, epic metal, but accidentally sounded like early, polished Def Leppard stadium rock.
That's the assessment. It suggests a pretty severe mismatch between what they wanted to achieve and what they actually produced. Trying to be metal gods ended up sounding, well, softer and maybe more dated than they intended.
That's quite a miss. And the second track?
The second one was Fat Lip, categorized as basically a Beastie Boys rock rap track.
Right, I remember that one.
So those 2 tracks, one a kind of accidental 80s rock homage, the other an attempt at genre blending. They're the only moments of slight interest. The rest, dismissed as, quote, rather predictably all filler.
Okay, But let's maybe challenge Greenstarox's view just for a second. Calling them a Blink-182 clone is one thing, but if the only two mildly interesting tracks are one that sounds like 80s hard rock, Pain for Pleasure, and one that's a rock-rap hybrid, Fat Lip, doesn't that maybe show a young band trying out different things rather than just being filler?
That's actually a really sharp point.
Maybe it's less boring filler and more just exploratory incoherence, trying to find their sound.
You could definitely argue that. Perhaps the failing isn't that the songs are bad filler, but that there's such varied attempts at finding an identity that the album just completely lacks cohesion.
Right.
And for a deep dive critic like Greenstarox, maybe incoherence is just as bad as mediocrity. The end result is the same. The album doesn't hang together. It fails to create a unified, lasting listening experience.
And the final nail in the coffin seems to be the critic's actual listening experience. This was apparently one of the few albums that got ejected early from the car.
Yeah, because the listening experience was just unbearable. It was painfully uneventful.
Painfully uneventful. Ouch.
And the final devastating summary of the album's impact or lack thereof is that the critic was bored just thinking about it. It failed the most basic test engagement. It wasn't just poor quality, it was actively tedious. And in an album quest, boredom is the unforgivable sin. Guarantees elimination.
So there we have it, the 4 contenders ranked. From Sheeran's near-classic potential down to Sum 41's actively boring rock. With Tom Odell's complex high-wire act just barely beating out the polished but ultimately kind of disposable country pop of Nashville.
So let's just synthesize that final outcome for round 1, Group 202. Ed Sheeran's X took the clear number 1, undeniable quality, lots of potential noted. Tom Odell's Wrong Crowd, that secured number 2 and moves on to round 2. 1 on artistic depth, even while bordering on that dreaded land of dirge.
Right.
The Nashville soundtrack took 3rd, lost out purely on that critical factor of longevity, and Sum 41's all killer, no filler, comprehensively eliminated in 4th place. Painfully uneventful.